Yes. Okay, cool. Should we dive in?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time listening. This is episode 3 of a Heaven series that we're doing on this Andover Baptist Church podcast, something we're trialing out. And we're grateful that you're sticking with us if this is day 3 for you tuning in. And today we are continuing this idea of hope and the difference that how we think about heaven and what is to come makes for the hope that we can have right now. And if you listen to the last episode, we started talking about some of the more difficult sides of this, what it means for suffering, what it means for difficulty. We're going to continue some of that today. So
Welcome to the
cheery start.
podcast.
Yeah, but we want it to be real and we want it to actually make a
Absolutely.
difference to your life. So there's no point, skirting around this stuff, is there really?
No. And who are you?
Who am I? Who am I? I keep forgetting to tell people. Well, I'm Becky, and I get to do this role called Next Steps leading it at Andover Baptist Church, which is really exciting. We're really passionate about the idea that everybody has a next step that they can take on their faith journey, and wherever you're at on your faith journey, we want to help you to take that next step. And you may not even think that you're beginning a faith journey yet, in which case, well done for taking the step to listen to this podcast. That's really cool that you're being curious and like exploring some stuff. So we're glad you're listening.
Yeah.
And who are you, Chris?
Yes, so I'm Chris, and I get to lead the team at ABC, which I love, and we have a great team here, and it's a great joy. And I'm been really excited about this series we're doing on a Sunday morning in our services, or could be Sunday anytime, or could be anytime when people catch up with it later on demand on YouTube about heaven. But very quickly recognised as I was preparing, I'm doing 3 talks in that series in our services, that there was way more that we need to unpack, and in particular what it means to live with the hope of heaven in our lives now. And that feels to me really important, something we don't talk about much around churches and in Christian circles, but something that's totally life-changing if we start to do it. So I'm really grateful for this podcast as an opportunity to unpack that, and that people are joining us to, I hope, find out how we can live with the hope of heaven in our lives. And I hope that it's really accessible to people no matter where they are on that kind of journey of faith, whether they've been Christians for years or exploring what Christians believe about something. Can I open up today with asking you a question, which I haven't prepped you for, so I'm totally throwing you in the deep end here. But I wonder, have you ever met somebody who's going through something like really difficult in their lives, but who you so admire for how they're keeping going through it? Maybe if they're a person of faith, how they're holding on to their faith in the midst of it. And actually, that's like been an inspiration to you. Have you ever met people like that in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. It's almost like it. I'll be really honest. It almost makes you feel a bit bad, actually, when you see somebody who actually is really going through it. And I'm thinking of one particular woman who was part of the church I grew up in, who very sadly had terminal cancer. And she was absolutely incredible, and she was full of actual joy all the way throughout her cancer journey. And sadly, she did eventually pass away, but she left this incredible legacy behind her of her tremendous faith in the midst of it, and to encourage others she would encourage others in their faith as she went through it. And it really, sometimes looking at her, it would really sort of kind of sink very deeply into me, like, wow, like I need to get some perspective, like, and I need some of what she's got, because if she's managing to push through just seeing her circumstances and see something else, then I should be able to do that better.
Yeah. I so resonate with that. Very similar experience. One of the things I get to do in my job sometimes, sadly, is go to visit people in hospital or who are really going through things. And I can think about a number of people. I've got one lady in mind, particularly as we launch into today's podcast, lovely lady called Carol, very similar situation. And she was bedbound for a long time, fighting a terminal cancer. She was in hospital towards the end of her life, and I went to visit her in hospital, and she ended up ministering to me. I was there to try and bring some comfort, which hopefully I did to some degree. But I went away from that visit feeling like I'd been challenged and inspired to grow in my faith. I remember saying to her, because she was really quite ill, and I said, "Oh gosh, this must be really difficult." And she said, "Chris," she said, "I've got all this time to lie here and talk to God. And I think of all the things that I want to say thank you to God for, all the things I'm grateful for, all the people I want to lift up before God." She said, "I've got this amazing gift." And this was how she said it, this amazing gift of time to just be in connection with God, and it just completely blew me away. And I'm still she sadly passed away. I'm still talking about her. I've still got her in my mind, and I think there's something in what we're going to be talking about today that somebody like the people we've been talking about, that they are modelling for us, the sort of thing that we're going to talk about this guy Peter is writing for us, and what it means to live with that hope of what comes beyond this life. So so I'd love for us to dig around in these verses that we're going to have a look at today. So through the podcast, every day we're picking a different section of the Bible that either is something that Jesus said about heaven or some of his closest friends said about heaven, and in particular the hope that we can get from having a perspective on heaven. So who are we looking into today in terms of where are we finding the author of what we're going to be looking into today?
Yeah. So I'm excited for today because we're going to be hearing from a guy called Peter. Peter's one of my favorite figures in the New Testament, and he was a follower of Jesus. He was a fisherman, and Jesus called him to a very, very different kind of life and to a new purpose. And Peter followed Jesus, and he's a really honest figure in the Bible. He's somebody very relatable. He goes through his fair share of doubts. He's a bit of a letdown at times. He's got lots of questions. I'm like nerding out already. Right. Okay. Let's get back on track. So Peter, he sees Jesus raised from the dead, and it changes everything. So he begins to take this message out to the world, to take the gospel, the good news out to people. And Peter particularly focused on people who were like him, who were Jewish, who came from a Jewish background, and but who didn't know about Jesus. And so he writes this letter to it's an interesting letter because it's a letter that circulates, so it doesn't get written just to one group. It's a letter Peter intended to circulate around several groups of people in an area called Asia, which would have been called Asia Minor, so it's like modern day Turkey area. And he talks about people who are scattered around, and he's very much taking on this mindset of talking to suffering and persecuted people, and talking to his people who are going through some stuff. So it's a letter on the edge.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And so Peter wrote 2 letters.
Yeah.
We're going to the first one, cunningly called 1 Peter, just to give us a clue.
Yes.
That's in the New Testament, and actually we're going right to the beginning of the letter. So do you want to dive in for us? Read that for us. It's 1 Peter chapter 1. We're looking at verses 1 to 7 today. So again, as we've said through the podcast, people want to have it open in front of them. However they do that, following along, great. If they just rather listen, that's great too. So
here we go.
Far away.
This is 1 Peter verse 1. So Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to God's elect exiles scattered throughout the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, who have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, through the sanctifying work of the Spirit, to be obedient to Jesus Christ and sprinkled with his blood. Grace and peace be yours in abundance. Peace be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. In all this, you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Wow.
Yeah.
I really need to rethink how I start my letters.
Yeah, I want to see this in some emails.
Yeah.
You're right. That would be very cool. So, are there a couple of things we need
Yeah, I
to?
think, shall we pick out a few words here? Because
Yeah,
there's straight away. So we've got to God's elect exiles scattered throughout the provinces. What's going on there?
yes. Well, thanks for picking that one. It's only a
Yeah,
theological issue that's challenged people for
just a
years and years and
theological
years.
landmine.
So Peter is here, I think, saying to the people that God has chosen, who are following God, who have become followers of Jesus. But who have been scattered. So this could well be Jewish Christians who have been scattered from the center of the Jewish faith in Jerusalem. It could have been, that's where the whole kind of Christian movement started in Jerusalem, with Peter, interestingly, telling the story of Jesus in a big public setting. But then with persecution, all that kind of stuff, people had to scatter from there. So they were exiled out. And actually, whilst it was a very negative thing because they were having to scatter because of persecution, they were taking Jesus with them. So actually, it sort of propelled the whole movement of Jesus forward much faster because people were scattered. So people who were following Jesus, who are in relationship with God, who have been scattered to different parts of the region that he's talking to. Is that fair? Is there anything else you should
That
add to
makes
that?
sense. And Peter then talks about they've been chosen through the sanctifying work of the Spirit.
Yeah.
What's sanctifying?
Yeah, good. Thank you. So sanctification is this process, a posh way of saying this process by which people are transformed more into the likeness of Jesus, and we would say, and the first followers of Jesus would say that the sort of the goal of the Christian life is to become more like Jesus, to exhibit the qualities that he exhibited, and that requires change and transformation in us. The good news is that we're told that's by the work of the Spirit of God, the presence of God in us, not by our own efforts and energies. So I think here he's talking about this work that is going on in somebody who's following Jesus through the presence of God at work in their lives to transform people more into the likeness of Jesus.
Yeah, it's good. So we're trying to ask 5 questions each time we come to a passage like this, and we hope that it also gives you who are listening 5 questions that you can use when you look at the Bible and when you study it by yourself or with others. 'Cause sometimes it's difficult to figure out how to do that. So we're asking, what's the context? What's the point? What's the difference? What's the tweet? How could you boil it down and put it into a couple of sentences? And also, what's next? What should we do with it? So do we need to unpack anything more about the context here, Chris?
I don't think so. We've talked about it being the start of the letter. He starts with what it means to be a Christian, verses 1 and 2, which we've just talked a little bit about, and then Peter kind of he's. I think he's setting out a framework in these first few verses about all that is to come in this letter, and this framework is about recognizing who, if you're a Jesus follower, who you are and what that means, and then he's like a call to praise God for who God is and what God has done, and that kind of sets the agenda for all that's to come in the letter.
Yeah. So let's go on to that then. What's the point of what he's saying here? So he comes into this idea, he starts talking about new birth into a living hope, and then he talks about we've got this inheritance, and it's a kind of inheritance that can't be touched and can't be tainted, and it's kept in heaven for us, it says. We've heard about that idea earlier on in this series. And then it starts talking about this metaphor of being purified and refined So what's the point? What's Peter getting at here?
Yeah, yeah. I think we hear echoes of what we've already heard about in the first two things of the podcast, right? I don't know whether you sense that. I mean, Becky, we talked yesterday about birth and about the pains of childbirth, but the joy of what's to come after that. And again, we get that similar kind of language of a new birth into a living hope. So there's life. I think that's really important. So I think there's this point about that God gives us hope in Jesus because of his resurrection from the dead. So again, the prospect of us being resurrected into heaven in the future is not a kind of blind hope. Peter has seen it with his own eyes. So a belief in resurrection is totally understandable now to Peter and not some sort of pie in the sky kind of concept. He's seen it. He knows it can happen. So that living hope that comes from that is there. But then I think one of the key points here is about this. In all this, you greatly rejoice. For while you might have had to suffer trials and grief in all kinds of trials, again, there is this inheritance that is coming, that is waiting. We've had that theme a lot, haven't we? It's being kept for us, that if we turn our eyes to, gives us a perspective on what is currently happening. And actually, that can lead to our rejoicing and praise of God. And that's where I think about my friend Carol. Because I think in the midst of the trials, she had her eyes fixed on something more, and that actually enabled her to rejoice and praise God in the midst of what was going on now. So for me, when I read that, she was immediately the person who came to mind when I was thinking about this. And that seems to me to be the key point, that because of the hope that is for us in heaven, demonstrated by the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, we can live a life of praise and worship and rejoicing to God in the here and now.
Even when suffering.
Even when we're experiencing the sufferings that come from the groaning we talked about, the groaning and decay of the world we talked about yesterday.
Yeah. It seems like, to me, that Peter's getting at this idea that even though, you know, these people are obviously going through tough stuff, and presumably that means that they're having things taken away from them, that they're losing some things, and things are feeling fragile in the here and now. They're realizing the fragility of life. So maybe some of their relationships are breaking down if they've decided to follow Jesus and others haven't, or maybe their work life is breaking down if people are saying, oh, you can't be part of us anymore because you're this weird Jesus person. And Paul is contrasting this kind of the suffering that we have now and the fact that things can perish and spoil and fade now, with this idea that what is kept for you in the future is untouchable, and it can't be touched by the difficulties that are coming against you right now. And there's something about that I'm thinking about, like we kept talking about this thing that's like being secured for you. It's like it's set aside for you. It's like it's in the bank and it's behind a vaulted door, and no one can touch that. No one can take that from you. Nobody can ruin it for you, even as you face stuff that's coming up against you right now. And that's, I guess he's really trying to encourage them with that, isn't it? That whatever's going on, there's something saved for you that can't be tainted. Which is pretty cool.
It's brilliant. I love how you've expressed that. I think that's so. Yeah, I mean that's inspiring me as you're talking. He's called us into inheritance that can never perish, spoil. So what we experience now can perish sometimes, can spoil sometimes, can fade sometimes, right? But there's this other inheritance, this inheritance that's way more than that, way better than that will never perish or spoil or fade. And I hear resonances of some of the things that Jesus taught in this about why store up for yourself treasures on earth where rust and moths can kind of destroy, eat away, when there is this treasure awaiting you in heaven. It's the same language or same kind of idea, not same language, same kind of idea here, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that it is being kept for us.
Yes.
That you can sort of almost see that in your mind, can't you? That God is there,
Yeah.
like protecting that thing,
Yes.
keeping it just ready for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Becky, God, I can hear you can hear God saying, "Becky, I've got this. I've got this cool
Mm,
thing waiting
mm,
for you."
yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it makes sense of those people we've talked about, your friend Carol, the person who inspired me when I was young as well, that um, it's that, as I reflect on it, it's that totally settled assurance
Yeah.
as somebody faces something terrible,
Yeah.
but yet yes, they've got joy, yes, they're worshipping God, but the kind of the bedrock of that is this like peace that they've kind of come to a place where they can accept
Mm.
what's going on,
Mm.
no matter, it's so painful and it's
Yeah.
so difficult, but it's almost like this settled assurance. And maybe it's about that. It's
Yeah.
that I know what's in the bank. Like
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know what God's saving for me, and I don't have to, that's not dependent on me, and it's
Yeah.
not dependent on this working out okay. It's dependent on my God who
Yeah.
saves it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I love that.
So what is the tweet?
The tweet. This is the
Yeah.
bit. This is the
This is the
question,
hard
isn't
bit,
it? That
isn't it?
we
Yeah.
so try this.
Yeah.
So, if we look forward to the inheritance that God is keeping for us in heaven, it can give us a living hope in the face of the trials and sufferings of this life.
One more time.
Yeah, I've got to remember it now.
Yeah.
If we look forward to the inheritance that God is keeping for us, perhaps we should say in the promise of heaven, it can give us a living hope in the face of the trials and sufferings of this life.
Yeah. I love the language of a living hope.
Yeah.
A hope that has life in it. It's got some beans.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I mean, Peter, he has, in his great mercy, God's great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And as we keep looking at that keeps striking me that, again, it's not a wishful thinking kind of hope for Peter anymore. I'm not sure that Peter, before he had seen Jesus risen from the, well, I'm certain that he would not have been expressing this kind of living hope sort of stuff. It's grounded in what he has seen with his own eyes, in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead.
Yeah.
Which, once you've seen that, helps you understand the promise of a resurrection to eternal life for you too.
Yeah.
Because you've seen it happen once.
Yeah. And it's a hope that does something in you. And that comes all the way back. We talked about it in episode 1, that hope produces things in us, that it produces faith, it produces love, it bears fruit in our lives.
Yeah. Which I think is the talking about faith being genuine, the genuineness of your faith, the refining by fire, that kind of stuff. I think that's what that's alluding to, that this living hope produces a real, not put on genuineness of faith that's gone through difficulties, but has still found a way to cling on to the hope, this living hope that we've been talking about in the midst of it.
Yeah, wow.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good, isn't it? Let's just end it there.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Yeah. So for me, the difference question is the thing that I'm thinking about throughout this, actually, but in here, what would it mean for me to live in the light of this inheritance that's being kept for me?
Yeah.
And I know that's a kind of a more broad kind of question that probably is true for the whole series. But I think in this one, what would it mean for me to live, particularly when life is difficult, in the light? Can I find a way to maintain a trust in and worship of God, Jesus, in the midst of the things that life throws at us?
Yeah. And I think for me that we've spoken about it already. The thing that's really hitting me today is that that assurance that God's got it, that the future is God's, and He's going to give it to me. And that means that whatever I'm facing today, and whatever I'm trying to get today, and whatever I'm trying to sort out today, ultimately, what I really need and what I'm really going to need when I can't do any more is something that God has secured for me. And there's immense peace in that. And in a world of immense pressure, that's really kind of
like... and I think I would want to say, if you're not a Christian, if you kind of you're exploring faith, you've stumbled across this podcast, or you're, for whatever reason, you're listening to it, what I hope that you'll be finding is this is what God offers. This is what Christians should be believing in. So even if you don't believe it yet, I think our hope would be that we're laying out as clearly as we can what it is that we believe in when it comes to life after this one, and that maybe that would be an encouragement to you, and something that you might want to talk about or get into more.
That's right, because that's an essential question for anybody who's exploring is, well, like, what's the difference? That's the question we're asking. And is it worth it? And, if this stuff is real, and Peter would say he's basing it on the fact of the resurrection, that he saw, because of that resurrection, he's come to believe in what's promised ahead because of what he's seen already. If it's real, it is so worth it. It's so worth, and it's so worth figuring out what you actually believe about this stuff. Because to be able to hope in this now, you want to have that change of perspective that we talked about. People who go through suffering, they have this change of perspective. They begin to ask the big questions. They have this strength of character that sometimes we don't have. We don't want to wait until suffering comes to gain that perspective, do we? And to be equipped with a perspective like this before suffering hits, that would be pretty amazing.
And that is the perfect cue up for our what's next question. Because here's what I wrote down as the what's next. Practice gratitude is what I wrote down.
Okay.
So that, people will be listening to this who are right in the midst of suffering and pain and so on. And, our hearts go out to you if that's your position. Our prayers go out to you if you need our help. If we can be helping anyway, people can get in contact with us. If we're not going through that right now, then sadly, inevitably, life will do that to us. So in the here and now, practicing gratitude, I think, is a really important kind of tool or discipline that sets us up and will help us when things come further down the road. So, what's next? Why don't, first thing in the morning, every day, why don't you note down, or have it in your mind, 3 things that you're grateful for today. And I think that's a habit that we can build into our lives. I think gratitude is an amazing antidote to so much of the stress, the worry, the anxiety, the pain that we experience in our lives. So practice gratitude is my what's next from today.
That's good. And then even if we're in a season where we can't find the things to list, we can practice being grateful for the promises of what will be. So what are the 3 promises you are grateful that, if you have come to believe in God, what are the 3 promises that you're grateful that God has given you about what is stored up for you in the future?
And again, if you're not a person of faith, I was about to say, I bet you, when I'm almost willing to do that, to say, if you started listing 3 things you're grateful for, you might not be grateful to God for them, because that's not where you are. It will change and transform your outlook on life. I've no doubt about that. So this is something that all of us can do, regardless of where we would say we were on our faith journey, I think.
Great. I'm going to crack on with that.
Good.
It's good. Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode, and we'll be back with another one. And well, let's keep going on this journey of figuring out what hope we have in heaven, what difference it makes right now. And wherever you're listening, we hope you have a great day and practice those gratitude habits.
Great. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Chris.